Hi, Dr. Yoshiram here again, and what could be more exciting than debating vegetarian versus non-vegetarian, or today's topics, plants versus animals. Anyways, that's my attempt to be all catchy and everything. First, let's talk about plants. Someone very wisely said, I don't know who to attribute this to, but eat mostly plants. And I couldn't agree more. Now, the key is to eat more wild plants, or as close to wild as you can possibly do, because the more wild the plant, the more phytonutrients and polyphenols are going to be found in them, along with certain minerals and vitamins as well. But it's these phytonutrients that are going to actually cause different genetic expression in us. So we're all born with our set of genes, right? But how those genes express is up to us and largely up to what we choose to put into our body. And so the more wild the plant, the better our genetic expression is going to be. That's what it boils down to. So if you can eat, maybe grow something, even if it's just a couple of herbs or a couple spices in a tiny little garden, that's great. Farmers markets generally going to have healthier food full of more phytonutrients than anything you buy in an actual store in general. And then there's wild plants. That's the best. That's like go for the gold right there. The more wild the plant, also the more hormesis is going to occur. So wild plants have a harder time to surviving, and so they have to put out these little chemicals to survive, to protect themselves. And while this might be hard on a gut that is leaky, or leaky gut, or intestinal permeability, if it's done in a relatively healthy person who's not suffering from a severely leaky gut, those short-term stressors that the plant grew up with, or that it experienced when being picked, actually cause a healthier stress response in our body, again, at the genetic expression level. And so long term, it actually helps us to fight off stress. Now, if you have a leaky gut, severe gut issues, gut intestinal permeability, then you're probably going to want to go easy on the raw plants. You're probably going to need to do more cooking of those. You don't want to do, I'm not all for doing a lot of people. So kale, right? Everybody knows this kale is healthy. I mean, yes, but too much of a good thing is bad, right? So don't go crazy on kale. Go on variety and cook it if you need it. If your gut needs it, cook it. And then as your gut heals, and gut health is a whole different rabbit hole, but heal your gut so that you can move from those cooked plants more towards the raw plants, because that truly is where so much of the enzymatic activity is. Those phytonutrients don't get completely destroyed, and maybe you can move towards light steaming and then lighter steaming. So eat mostly plants. It's going to help your health. Okay, now on to meat. When we look at the blue zones, and by the way, let me back up to all the blue zones. A lot of these videos I think are going to kind of glean a lot of info from the blue zones, because that's where people are living the longest and are the healthiest. They live great lives, and then they die really quickly over the course of a couple days or a couple weeks. And that's the way we want, right? We don't want to live, or I don't want to live until I'm 95 if I'm not feeling good right up until the very end. And so all the blue zones, they eat mostly plants, and they eat lots of wild plants. Okay, now on to the animals. Only one of the blue zones, actually the Adventists here in close to where I am at in Loma Linda, they're vegetarians, but all of the other blue zones around the world, actually they do eat meat. They eat animal products. Now, the animal products like eggs and cheese, fish, maybe sheep and goat, they eat fairly commonly. What they don't eat every day, though, is a lot of the red meat like cow or beef. And when they do eat those more red meat animals, and even the sheeps and the goats, they're eating the whole thing, right? So muscle meat is very methionine producing, and versus the non-muscle part of the animal has a lot of glycine, and that's where bone broths and bone marrow are really healthy. But really from the nose to the tail of the animal should be eaten. If you eat meat, the whole thing should be eaten. So organ meats. Because that balance of methionine to glycine is super important for long-term health. The other aspect is in these blue zones, all their meat is totally amazing quality, right? Grass-fed, free-range, pastured, not fed antibiotics, not fed pesticide-ridden food or unnatural grains that are not natural to that type of animal eating it. And so they're just healthy, right? And I've said this in some videos before and other emails and tell it to all my patients, but a meat from, going to your local Safeway or Vons or Ralph's or whatever typical grocery store, a piece of meat from a piece of beef, we'll just call it a steak, a beef steak from the regular part of the meat section. That is a completely different food product compared to the type of beef steak that the people in these blue zones are eating. Two totally different. You can't even call, I wouldn't even call them the same thing. Like, they're that different. And so it's silly. That's why I have an issue with a lot of studies that are done on meat eaters versus non-meat eaters, because they're eating the crappiest quality muscle meat only. That's the average meat eater, right? Versus a person who's eating the highest quality meat that has eaten wild plants itself, that's totally pastured, free range, organic, non-GMO, has a total different nutritional profile. And again, not just the muscle meat, but parts of the whole animal are being eaten. And so you get this really beautiful balance, right? Humans for eons have been eating animals. And so I do believe that that can be part of a healthy diet. Do you have to eat it? No, I don't think you have to eat animal products, but I think there's a very healthy way. And again, all but one of the blue zones around the world eats meat, but they eat the right type of animal. I should say. I shouldn't even call it meat. I should say they eat the right type of animal. And so eat mostly plants, perhaps parts of the healthiest whole animal meats as well. Hope this serves you. Dr. Yoshiram.